So here's an interesting, I don't know, set of stories about the essay on both the SAT and the ACT. Now, at this point, the essay is gone from the SAT, but when they first introduced the 2400 test, they brought in the essay. And they said, we're going to grade it holistically, which meant 2 readers were each going to read your essay, and they were going to each give it a grade from 1 to 6, and then those 2 numbers are going to be added together. And I was like, okay. Challenge accepted. And so I went in and I took the SAT and I did pretty well. I got a 2360, but they gave me a 9 on the essay, which was really distressing for me because I had written what I felt was a superlative essay, and it was. It wasn't even a 12. This essay should have been like a 14 or a 16 on their scale, right? I mean, you know, Thomas Jefferson and the tyranny of the majority and, you know, William Shakespeare and checks and balances and the Constitution. I went for it. I wrote a great essay. And I got a 9. And back in the day, the way they handled disputes with one's essay grade was you sent them a $50 check to hang on to. Then they would go check into your essay. Now, if they changed your essay score, then okay, you had a valid complaint and they would refund your $50. But if they didn't change your essay score, then they would just keep your $50. It was basically just a $50 ransom that you were giving them to make sure that you weren't just protesting every single essay grade that you ever got. All right, fine. So I was outraged when I got the 9. I was like, hit the ceiling, went crazy. It was so funny because I was so sure that I deserved a much higher score than that. And I did. So I appealed, and I sent them a check for $50. And then a couple of months later, I got my check for $50 back in the mail, and they changed my score on the essay from a 9 to a 12. Ha ha. But that was my first inkling that maybe all was not as it seemed. Meaning, maybe they weren't really looking as closely at the essays as they should have been. Maybe they weren't really even kind of reading them that much. I didn't know. So me and my buddy, who were taking the SAT quite a bit at that point, and also the ACT with essay, we decided we would conduct a series of experiments. And what we would do is, at first, we would write normal essays and see what kind of grades we got. And then we would start to write different kinds of essays. So let's examine one of the normal essays that I wrote. Wouldn't you know it? I have the original essay that I wrote that got a 9 and then got changed to a 12. Here's my own handwritten copy of it. You decide if this deserves a 12 for an essay that was written in, 25 minutes for the SAT. So the question is the opinion, basically, is majority rule a good idea in every circumstance, in every situation? To summarize. I strongly believe that the concept of majority rule is, parentheses, to loosely paraphrase Winston Churchill's response when asked about the validity of democracy and capitalism as systems of government and economics, quote, the absolute worst idea the world has ever seen, with the possible exception of all the others that have been tried from time to time, end quote. In my mind, this means that although the concept of majority rule has deep flaws, it is still better than the alternatives. Additionally, many of the structural flaws that one encounters in a system built on majority rule, including what Thomas Jefferson famously referred to as the, quote, tyranny of the majority, can be mitigated through the judicious application of a system of checks and balances, such as the ones found in the United States Constitution and Bill of Rights. Majority rule becomes simply another name for totalitarianism without any system of checks and balances to prevent the majority from doing whatever it pleases. For example, what if 51% of the population were to decide that the remaining 49% of the population should be enslaved? One might laugh at such an extreme example, but is this scenario really so different than the one in 19th century America, a period noted for, among other things, producing the Dred Scott Supreme Court decision declaring African Americans to be 3/5 of a man? Now, I had my facts wrong. That's the wrong court case, but they're not supposed to take off on factual inaccuracies. That's supposed to be totally fine. It's in the rules. The basic rights of human beings, so clearly ignored during this shameful period of American history, need to be codified by law so that they are beyond the reach of any majority. Making basic rights a part of the law of the land was the prime motivation behind the Founding Fathers' establishment of the Bill of Rights. Among other rights, it declares that the U.S. government shall make no laws establishing any religion as governmentally sanctioned. This was done precisely to counter the potential ill effect that establishing such a national religion would have on American society, e.g., stifling the freedom of those choosing not to join in the national religion and to worship, believe, pray, and practice their non-official religions. The desire to do this was brought about by the Founding Fathers because they themselves had seen firsthand the ill effects of blindly hewing to the beliefs of one body, whether that be a king or a national majority. First and foremost, the multiple perspectives and opinions so vital to sustaining a nation and its people are immediately lost. It is clear from examples including the U.S. Constitution and Bill of Rights and the words of Jefferson and Churchill why the beliefs of the majority must be subject to checks and balances if a free society is to survive. Writing people's basic rights into law is a good start towards protecting the minority and society itself from the tyranny of the majority. So I thought that was pretty good. Definitely deserving of a 12, possibly deserving of a 14 or a 16. Thank you very much. Got a 9, appealed it, got it changed to a 12. So that got me and my buddy thinking, hey, maybe they're not really reading these essays that carefully. So what we decided to do was write essays for the upcoming SATs and ACTs that we were going to take, where the first paragraph was completely normal, and then the rest of it could be a hodgepodge of complete insanity, just to see if anybody was reading past the first paragraph. So I wrote this essay. Ahem. The question is it better to utilize forethought in different situations? Something like that. Sorry, I'm totally misstating the question. Is it better for people to act on their feelings than to talk about them? What a strange question. So I decided I was going to write a completely absurd essay. So here we go. I strongly believe that it is unquestionably better for people to immediately act without any forethought at all. If we take the opposite path, we humans will be sucked into a never-ending paroxysm of thinking eternally while sacrificing all forward motion on all projects. Is this truly the desired outcome, or is this merely the outcome we desire? Makes no sense, right? Clearly, forethought is evaluative. We use it to analyze situations we have been thrust into. By its very nature, it prevents us from immediate action. Is this not its strongest asset? On the contrary, it is not! Exclamation point. For if we spend time thinking, that could lead to planning, pandering, and all manner of indecisive non-action. Why, the next thing you know, we would be a country of pandering, non-productive idiots. Is this the outcome we desire? I say thee nay. We humans are a very verby species, especially compared to all the other species of furry mammals that give birth to live young. We always want to be doing stuff. During William Shakespeare's The Great Depression, people and characters in books were given the option of being an easy, boring character who's killed off in the first chapter, never to be seen again, or to linger on interminably, like a dread disease or unwanted house guest. Guess what they all chose? Not the delicate equipoise of thoughtful pandering in action, but rather the pulse-pounding excitement that only deciding stuff, super fast, Jackie Chan style, running on instinct-only decisions can deliver. Also, whiz-bang, pow, with lots of exclamation points. And other sound effects spring to mind here as they more accurately match the dialogue. Those who advocate for more deliberation, who are they? Nattering nabobs of negative inaction, that's what. We listen to them, and all of society's wars will be immediately lost. The wars on poverty, drugs, ignorance, bias, inequality, violence, and war itself. What is this, a comic book? Would be forfeit. And why? Planning, that's why. The minute, second that we furry humans do anything, it should be that pineapples may have many pointy, pokey, prickly things on the outside, but also on the outside, none of them has any sleeves. Don't worry, I'll explain that later. And so it is with American culture as well. No sleeves at all. No sleeves for anyone. Standardized test pineapples or not. In conclusion, You can make many arguments, but at the end of the day, you milk the cows, slop the horses, and wait for one's inexorable fate to descend upon one like a tiny dragon in a massively multiplayer online role-playing game, who forgot his ball, his bat, and the very oxygen and carbon atoms he would need to practice his arrivals more fluidly. I mean, seriously, you just want to pop out of a cake wearing that? I mean, I know it's Aunt Edna's birthday, but are we truly sure we want to wear a leopard bikini on camera? Peace. So that's my essay. 10 out of 12. 2 people read that and gave it a 5 each. Okay. Oh, this one is great. Okay. We experimented a lot as we took these tests, changing around the structure of these essays a little bit. This one has a normal first half and a completely insane second half. Question, assignment. Is it best to forget about past mistakes as soon as possible? God, these prompts used to be somewhat absurd. I strongly disagree with the statement, it is best to forget past mistakes as soon as possible. In my mind, this statement is saying that the less memory we have to build upon and learn from, the better. What is human experience if not experimenting with a wide variety of solutions, observing the results, and then sharpening our skills and our abilities by remembering our mistakes and compensating for them? Without a deep and detailed set of memories describing success, failure, and everything in between, we as humans have no concrete methods for honing skills and moving forward. Are we to sacrifice our basic humanity in order to better protect some very sensitive person's feelings? Or should we as a people decide that the only way forward through our trials and travails hinges on the use of memory as its basic cornerstone? Whitewashing over failures so that they are quickly forgotten and therefore never truly learned from is probably the single worst tactical idea most people will ever have the misfortune to come across. After all, what are we in our most basic essences if not thinking, problem-solving machines? Other than our very problem-solving abilities, what separates us from the animals that cannot remember their most recent mistakes and therefore learn from them, such as the badger, goldfish, yeti, or soon-forgetting tree sloth? Nothing, that's what. And if this most basic of all requirements for learning, progress, and advancement is removed, what then? Would the very fabric of society not start to unravel, much like the time-space continuum in just over 43% of episodes of Star Trek-related franchises? It would, by gum. And who would be there to gather up the pieces, Humpty Dumpty style, and put everything back together again? Certainly not all the king's horses, which in and of itself raises an interesting question, namely, who does all refer to in that platitude, the kings or the horses? As of this point, it is unknowable, so let's not focus on that issue for now. As one can easily see from the above complete lack of any examples, remembering mistakes, methods, techniques, approaches, and fisticuffs can only serve to bring one's immortal soul closer to the presence of the Lord and closer to the presence of world and communist defeating technology, mostly to those who have always worn shoes on Thursdays. Would we then say yes to the idea of New York Harbor being attacked by mutated radioactive hamsters? Of course not. This shall not stand. But what shall stand in its stead? Only the sum total of human accomplishment as measured against all human suffering. For without memory, all life, as Buddha teaches, is suffering, which is caused by desire. For if we eliminate the basic desire to forget, we lose what we are, and all of us become the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. I thank you. An 8. 2 4s on this. Complete lack of any sense making anything. And then, my magnum opus. Oh, I was going to explain the pineapples have sleeves thing. That was some kind of weird standardized question in England, and there was like a huge outcry, and they were like, does the pineapple have sleeves? And it was just like some kind of open-ended essay question. I don't know, meant to spur thought or whatever. So I decided to quick shove it into my essay for no reason. All right, so a little background on this next essay. My buddy and I decided before going into this one that we would each pick a certain sentence and repeat it in each and every paragraph. So I decided that my sentence that I would use would be, suddenly, Aquaman's communicator pinged. Because that's a great way to, make a segue, change scenes, So this is when we were just writing absurd stuff. What's the question? Is it possible for a society to be fair to everyone? Yes. Sure. 8 p.m. Thursday. Society will be fair to everyone. That's the question. I strongly believe that while it is society's overall overarching goal to treat all of its members with fairness, this must be acknowledged as a very long-term goal, and therefore progress toward this noble goal must also be given its due. While most people both enjoy the greater benefits of and work toward the larger goal of fairness for all, this simply must be viewed as a work in progress and not the final state of civilization. The idea that each person's actions serve as a microcosm of society at large is reflected throughout literature, history, and our personal lives. Since most people overtly desire to live in a fair society, it makes sense that the goals and actions of larger society would address this. So we've completed the first paragraph, pretty normal, but now, let's go off the rails a little bit. I have seen the concept of society always striving toward greater fairness proven time and again through my personal favorite type of escapist entertainment, the comic book. Suddenly, Aquaman's communicator pinged. Might be a line of narration, dialogue from one of these aforementioned books. Having narrators for our stories is a relatively recent development. My dad got a new car. He likes narrators, but only at first before serving, they are dipped in flour and rolled in oats, as if they were nothing more than jelly donuts to be. Something like a bride to be, I'm guessing here. Another excellent example of this type of linear thinking can be found in the works of William Shakespeare when he wrote the classic lines of dialogue from his play Aquaman, which every school child in the land has memorized by age 2. Namely, suddenly Aquaman's communicator pinged. He knew that line would someday be quoted on standardized tests until the end of the universe. And so, future past history, as foretold foremost, forehead Farfignugan by Mr. William Shakespeare, once again shows us the way. And what a way to travel it is! Suddenly Aquaman's communicator pinged. And that's how Aquaman knew that the mighty sperm whale from Australia was going to be the best man at a Tomatoes wedding. But tomatoes can't get married, I hear you cry. Well, who are you to decide people's destinies? Some plain narrator of some plain story brought to us on some late-night cable TV networks? I say thee nay, like a horse, who is very, very hoarse. In fact, you could say this horse is a seahorse, which is why suddenly Aquaman's communicator pinged. It was Superman on the line. Hey, did I ever talk to you about product placement in your movies? Because, that's what Superman would say to Aquaman. As we can plainly see from the above examples, life certainly gets more fair with age. In fact, just the other day, blah-bling example, blah number 17. Suddenly, Aquaman's communicator pinged. It was his agent on the line. He wanted to know if the Prince of the Seas, Aquaman, and his blushing bride, Lady Aquaman, would like to have lunch. He's still waiting for a response. So this load of complete and total absurdity, it makes no sense except for the opening paragraph, got a 9 out of 12. Now, I did write one crazy one that got a 7, but still, that means it got a 3 and a 4 from the 2 graders. I believe this one's completely absurd. I did write insane from paragraph 2 on, so that's good. Oh, what's the question? Sorry. Is it best to determine how wise people are by how happy they are? How would you know how happy somebody is? I strongly believe that so here's my response. Again, the question is it wise to determine here's the question again. Is it best to determine how wise people are by how happy they are? I strongly believe that although one's general level of happiness can provide crucial insights into one's overall perceived level of wisdom, this fact is greatly reduced in significance by the idea best summarized as ignorance is bliss. Are we to assume that dogs and other happy, contented pets have levels of wisdom far in excess of our own? And what about those whom we know to have been to be truly wise, yet fail to display the same level of outward happiness as ones with far less wisdom? True wisdom, as is the case with true anything, cannot be measured using some overly simplified yardstick, such as outward happiness, and is rather the sum of many disparate factors, all of which contribute to an overall feeling of measured wisdom. First paragraph completed. Let's begin. This argument can be most effectively illustrated by a short story about a fairy tale, which in turn is about a cobbler. A cobbler is a shoemaker or shoe repairman. Did you know that? Word etymology is a fascinating thing. The problem is, some people cannot tell the difference between etymology and entomology, which is the study of insects. Not pies, silly person, even if the brand name Entomans sounds similar to insect studies. A friend of mine and his wife are epidemiologists. That means they study the morphology, morbidity, and transmission rates of various diseases, aka epidemics. But yet, because our society is so superficial and so focused on beauty of the surface deep variety, everywhere these two people go, people mistake their vocation for something relating to the study of the epidermis. Imagine you spend your days toiling over tables chock full of statistics on disease transmission rates, and then you decide to take a break to go to a party with regular people. Are they not to be offended by the blatant assumption that because they use part of the word epidermis in their job description, they must be casualties of the long-running beauty wars? Why, that would be a good concept for a reality TV show. Now, I strongly feel a desire to just list things at random. Vacuum cleaners, Hurricane Sandy, the month of Thermidor, air conditioning and repair. And I sure like ice cream. William Shakespeare made movies while Alexander Graham Bell invented the phone booth. Halloween candy, new paragraph. Halloween candy, tooth decay, the atom bomb, the Cold War, Dr. Manhattan, AP US history, anyone? My dad got a new car. The Civil War, the Revolution, World War I and World War II. Vietnam and the Great Depression, not to be confused with the Great Gatsby, which my mom wrote in her free time. To summarize, you are either with us or against us. You be the judge. A 7. Anyway, my opinion is, through our experimentations here, we very clearly demonstrated that they are only reading, at most, the first paragraph, as evidenced by the fact that, I'm getting 9s and 10s on these crazy nonsensical essays, and I believe that I only got 9s and 10s because my handwriting was not beautiful. Had I had beautiful handwriting and written those opening paragraphs, which were great, I probably would have gotten 12s. I'd like to make a note here that this was not confined at all to the SAT. We got the same exact results when we wrote crazy essays for the ACT as well, only the ACT does not give you your essays back, so you can't see the craziness that you wrote, whereas the SAT, I guess, unwisely chooses to do that in the case of me then making this video. Anyway, so I guess what the point of all this is once you're a person like me and you write a great essay and you get a 9 on it, you start to become suspicious that maybe they're not really reading them that carefully. And so you start to conduct experiments, and then you discover they're definitely not reading the essays that carefully. So anyway, that's my point. Hope you enjoyed these essays. I'll probably type them up or something so everybody can see them. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video, and see you next time.